basically, if you don't have a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, you're not a real Sampradaya. So then, Madhvacharya has a commentary, but then when Lord Chaitanya came, then like I was saying in the last class, he adjusted things. So then they're like, well, you Gaudiya Vaishnavas don't have a commentary, so then you're kind of like, what are you? You're just a bunch of sentimentalists in philosophy. So then, I'm not sure who it was, but somehow or other someone told Baladev Vibhushan, you need to, because he was such a scholar, he was already a scholar, that's why his name is Vibhushan. Vidya means knowledge, and Krishna means the ornament. So he's like, yeah, he got that name. It's like Prabhupada got Bhaktivedanta. So, yeah, he was like the biggest scholar at the time, so everyone said, well, if anyone's going to do it, he's going to do it. But he felt himself unqualified. So then he was saying, no, I can't do it. And then finally they said, just, you have to do it. So then he went before the deity, Rupa Goswami's deity, Govindaji, God Govinda, there in Vrindavan. And he prayed to the deity. He just poured his heart out. He said, they're telling me that I have to do this. I feel so unqualified. I don't want to mess it up. You know, this is like so significant. This is going to establish the Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara. And so the Govinda deity actually spoke to him and said, don't worry, I'm going to tell you what to write. He said, you just come and sit here every day and at this time, and I'm going to dictate it to you. Way. Yeah, so then that's what he did. He just got his notebook, he got his pen, and he sat there, and the deity spoke, and he wrote it down. And therefore, the commentary is called Govinda Vasya. So Vasya means literally the speech, the words of Govinda. So that's why it says to Baladev Vibhushan, who so nicely presented the Govinda Vasya commentary on Vedanta philosophy. So what's the link between Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and Baladev Vibhushan's Govinda Vasya commentary?
This is the first English commentary from someone in the Gaudiya Vaishnava line.
Okay. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada is also an Acharya, and he's like establishing something. He's establishing the Vedanta of Bhagavad Gita for the line. And also?
Krishna spoke to him?
Yeah, that idea that Prabhupada said that. He says, I haven't written these books. Krishna has written these books. Krishna has written the purports and inspired the translations. And so, yeah, that idea that this is Krishna's words. So I think that's very significant. If we accept it like that and have faith in that, then this is actually like Krishna spoke to Srila Prabhupada. This is what he wanted English-speaking people at this time and circumstances to understand. Okay, so we're going to, I was just saying that we're not going to have kirtan at the beginning of class. Instead, we're going to recite the Mangalacharana. So that's written here in the Bhagavad Gita. And basically what Mangalacharana is it's an auspicious invocation. That's literally what the translation of Mangalacharana means. It's an invocation, and it's meant to invoke the blessings. So the idea is that we can't do anything without the blessings of our superiors. And so, like for example, the first prayer is offering obeisances and gratitude to our spiritual master. The next one is to Rupa Goswami. And then the next one we start bonding on Shri Guru. That's offering to the Guru, to all the Vaishnavas, to the 6 Goswamis, to the Panchatattva, to Radha Krishna, Lalita Vishaka, like everybody in that one. Then Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, that's asking for Krishna's blessings. Then Tapta Kamshana Gauranga is for Srimati Radharani. Panchakalpa Vishcha, that one we know is for all the Vaishnavas again. Then Sri Krishna Chaitanya, that's obviously for the Panchatattva, and then the Hare Krishna mantra for Radha Krishna. So it's this invocation includes everybody, all the Vaishnavas, all the Goswamis, our gurus, 6 Goswamis, Panchatattva, Radha Krishna, Lalita Vishaka. Okay.
This Lalita's appearance day, right?
Yeah, it is Lalita's Sasti. So I was thinking that one thing we can do, because some of you are a little new to Sanskrit, is, because we're reciting the Sanskrit prayers, is to give you a very brief crash course on Sanskrit pronunciation. All of Prabhupada's books have a guide to Sanskrit pronunciation in the back, so you can look on that just to like, if you forget or to make sure. Because as we read the Bhagavad Gita, we're also going to be reading the Sanskrit for all the verses. Read the Sanskrit, the translation, and the purports. Skip the word for word. So most of the letters are the same. There's just a few that kind of. You want to say where you can see this board? Move that.
We can move the table. Is that settled?
Huh? Wait, where are we?
Just so you can see it, maybe like.
John, I missed your help from
With that one.
So I'm not gonna do them all, because most of them are kind of like obvious, but I'm just gonna do the tricky ones. So like in Sanskrit, when you see a C, it always makes ch. Okay, that one you know. Then S by itself is just an S. But if it has a dot under it, or if it has an accent mark, then it's sh. And they're both like two Indian people, there's a difference between those two, but for the Western ear, there's no difference. So don't worry about it. It's just sh. That's all you need to know. Okay, then another tricky one is R with a dot under it. So that's read. Like read. Okay? That dot adds like an I. And yeah, we can go through the vowels. So then A without anything is like but. A with a line over it is So This one is you hold longer. So this is just up. This is And the same with I. It's like it and then E. Ooh and ooh. Like that. And then for O and E, there's no lines. O and E are always like, they're already stressed vowels. But when they're like this, they're not stressed. So, when you're trying to figure out the meter for a verse, if you don't know the meter, the stressed vowels give you some indication of the meter. But for Bhagavad Gita, it's easy because all the verses are either 8 syllables or 11 syllables.
Yeah, let's switch out tables.
You can come here, Steve.
Put this table here.
You should. I mean, it's basically, it should. Yeah. Because we're like Western, I like it. And then AI is I, like as in aisle, like walking down the aisle. And then AU is O. It's almost like an O, but it's more like it's kind of like a mix between ow and O. So it's like O. It's like ow. It's kind of like a howl, like ow. This is up and this is oo, so it's like ow. Okay? And then this one is aha. So that dot makes the H, it's like aha, but it's only at the end of the line. So for example, if you go to text 1, which is our verse of the week, 1:1.
We use our phones.
Yeah. I just think it's more helpful. So if you look at the verse, it's Dharma Kshetre, Kuru Kshetre, Samaveta, Yuyut Savaha. Because that one's at the end of the line. But then the next word is mamaka. And because it's in the middle of the line, then you don't say it. So then you say mamaka pandavas chaiva. So this is only at the end of the line.
Interesting.
That you make it
I heard that it's also, isn't it only if it's at the end of the second?
the second and the fourth, actually. Yeah, that's kind of the detail. End of second.
Interesting.
Why is that?
No idea. I mean, one thing is that if it's in the middle of the line, then it's going to throw off the syllables. That makes sense. But then, yeah, because the second and the fourth line are kind of like, it's sort of like couplets. So the end of the first line is still the middle of the couplet.
Oh.
like that. Like
So
usually
for-
when devotees quote a verse, they'll quote either one couplet or the other one. You know, like they always say, "Ye tam mams prapadyante tam sataiva pajamya," but they may not necessarily say the final.
So does it mean that if you only do the double thing if it's on both the second and the fourth line?
No,
or
no,
either
second,
or?
or yeah, this is actually the second one.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Then, okay, this is a really tricky one. Can you guys see? So if you have a J, like normally J makes a J. Oh, that's another thing about Sanskrit is it's not like English that sometimes a letter makes one sound and sometimes it makes another sound. Every letter makes the same sound every time. So once you know how to pronounce them, you're gonna get it right every time. Because it's not like in English, like C, sometimes it makes K, sometimes Y, sometimes it's Y, sometimes it's E at the end. It's not like that in Sanskrit. The Y is always Y, C is always Ch. Okay, so J makes J. But when J, this is like a letter unto itself. It's called a conjunct letter. When the N has a squiggle over it, there's a word for that. Does anyone know this? Huh? No, the squiggle. Anyway, so this makes, yeah. And it's basically like, it's almost always in the word jnana, which means knowledge. So it's kind of similar to the English where we have no, or we have like, for example, agnostic is the same thing. It's agnostic. It comes from that. So J and N with squiggle over is yeah.
That's one thing I've had trouble pronouncing a lot.
Yeah?
Yana, like, that's how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah,
that was
jnana.
good.
I see that, I can pronounce that word, but then there's like other words with the J-N-A-N intro, and it's like, changes everything.
We have it right here in the invocation. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya.
And sometimes you hear devotees say like Om Ajnana, and then that's a Jnananjana.
Yeah, it's
Is that
just
also
weird, but
correct?
yeah,
It's like a
it's
different.
like you're just saying it right. Okay, and then what else is there? That's it. Oh, one thing is like sometimes there'll be a letter which is like there'll be B, like Bhagavad Gita. So there's a B and then there's BH. So like as English speakers we'll just be like Ba and Ba, Bhagavad Gita. But it's actually, I mean, you can get away with that in ISKCON, but actually it's Ha. That H has, like I said, there's no silent letters in Sanskrit. Every letter has, you know, it makes its sound. So it's the combination of Ba and Ha, but with no vowel sound. So it's just Ha. It's like a breath. It's like Ba, Ha, Ga, Ha, Ha, Ha. You just sort of put an extra breath in there. So if you want to say it right, it's Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita. Actually, it's a long I and a long, yeah. It's Bhagavad Gita.
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 Short,
Like
right?
Gita.
Bhagavad. Most people say Bhagavad.
Yeah, it's Bhagavad Gita. Right?
Bhagavad.
Say it in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so it's good to know, it's good to pronounce things properly, and this will help, you know, also later when you want to learn, if you want to learn verses, you can learn the proper pronunciation. And when you give classes, you'll need to recite the verse, and others will repeat after you, so you need to know how to recite it properly. So it's actually very simple. Sanskrit's easy, and yeah, it's just really nice that every letter makes the same one sound and the same sound. So.
What about the V in Bhagavad, like Bhagavad? Like I've heard Wad before.
Yeah, because it's sort of like in India, I mean, basically it makes, it's pho, but it's sort of like different parts of India, they say it differently. Just like the Bengalis, they always say a V as a B.
But
Yeah.
Jivana.
Like Vrindavan.
Yeah,
They'll
Vrindavan.
always say that. And then others will say more like a W, like Vrindavan.
Worse. The
Vrindavan.
worst is
Vrindavan or something like that.
worst of the week.
Worse of the week. And then the Bengalis would say verse of the week.
First. Run
So-
up, run up.
Yeah, that's just like dialects, but the actual thing is Because B is another letter, like in Sanskrit, it's like this is B and this is B. It's two different letters. But in Sanskrit, there's no W. So like if your name starts, if there's a, they want to write an English word in Devanagari, they'll do it with a W, with a B because it's the closest thing to a W. That's why they get confused. There's no W. Okay, is everybody cool with that? Any questions about Sanskrit letters? Facts?
Okay, just to clarify, so the B is the ba and the V is the va.
B is ba and V is va. The same as English.
Cool.
Like that, yeah.
Just checking.
And then if there's an H, it's
Ba.
so take a breath before you say it. Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, so on that note, let's say the invocation. So go to page 1. You already are you already there? Introduction. We're going to do the invocation, then we'll go back to settings.
Bhutale, Bhutale.
Page 1 of the Bhagavad Gita where it says introduction. Are you all there?
Jai.
No.
Come on, Mario.
That's why
You got that phone, you know. On that damn phone.
Loading.
Phony baloney.
Oh, snap.
On my Critics Parade Bhagavad Gita title page. Which one is it?
No.
Introduction.
Introduction. Okay, we're going to start. You probably know these.
There. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did.
Alright, ready? So we're going to say this in unison.
Oh,
Wait, we're
my
going to do it
God.
slowly. So no racing. We're going to do it together. So follow my pace. Om
Madhyana Dimarasya Dhyana Chakshurmidhyana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stavitam Yena Bhutale Swamyam Rupagaramayam Tade Tadapi Sampadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padagamalam Shri Guruna Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahajana Rajunada Vedantim Sachivam Sarvaitam Sadhutam Parijana Saditam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Gadan Sagan Jagata Shri Veksha Nirvitam Sacha
Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Gopika Radha Kanda Namaste Nata Ganta Garani Radhe Vrindavaishnavi Vrisavanyu Sivde Devi Ranamami Dvayari Pariye Vansha Gyana Vibhutyacha Jayapurime Jaja Vadinam Bhavayevo Vaishnavevo Yunamo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Asadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
So nice. So we'll start every class like that. Steven.
I have a question. So maybe I wasn't here for this because I was late. But if you go to Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam, that's the little apostrophe before Vishtam.
Yeah.
How do we?
It means there's an A missing. It's actually, the word is Abhishtam.
So how do we pronounce it?
You just like Manobhishtam. Like, you don't say the A.
You don't say
It's
it.
because there's a vowel in front of it, right?
Yeah,
They
because you
don't
can't
do
have,
double
you're not
vowel.
going to be like Mano Abhishtam. It's too awkward. And also the number of syllables has to
Okay.
be.
What about two consonants back to back, like Projita, I think, like JJ, something like that.
Then you just kind of like
Merge
It's
it.
like projita.
Or
It's
just
a
a
little bit
little
long.
longer.
Oh, there's another thing that I wanted to tell you all that reminds me. So, I think I mentioned this in Bhagavatam class before, but it's good to repeat because it can really mess up the recitation. Is if, for example, there's a verse, there's a line, paramati, so this ends with a Y, and we're used to saying, we would say choppy, but it's not. So a Y, the Y always makes ya, even though it looks like it should be an E at the end. So if it ends with a ya, but you can't be like chop ya, right? So then this Y merges with the vowel in the next word. So it's going to be paramatmeti chop yukto. It just merges together. There's another, and also sometimes we have, like there's one verse, 7.5, aparayam itas, and then this word is T, but then you have anyam. So it's aparayas itas tvanyam, because you can't say like T, what are you going to say? So it's itas tvangam. So you just need to, when the word ends with a vowel, with a consonant, that means that it's always that not always, because it might be like ends with a T or something, but then the next word starts with a vowel, then they merge, you say it all slurred all. Okay? So, let's go back to setting the scene. Because Bhagavad Gita is, it's a book in itself, but it's also the chapter of the larger work, Mahabharata. And so it takes place on a battlefield. So some people often wonder, like, how is it that this philosophy is being spoken on a battlefield? So setting the scene gives us it puts it in context. Let's just go around and everybody read. Are you there, Trisha?
I'm there.
Yeah. You want to start? But I want to start at one end and then just go around. Since these guys are being. Yeah, you're right. Okay, Marty, we start. Go clockwise.
Although widely published and read by itself, Bhagavad Gita originally appeared as an episode in the Mahabharata, the epic Sanskrit history of the ancient world. The Mahabharata tells of events leading up to the present age of Kali. It was at the beginning of this age, some 50 centuries ago, that Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to his friend and devotee Arjuna. We're doing paragraph by paragraph?
Yeah.
I have another question about pronunciation. So in like Mahabharata, some people just leave off the last A and some people pronounce it. What's
Yeah,
proper?
sometimes you can get away with leaving off the.
Because it's like Arjun or Arjuna.
Yeah.
Like it makes
Because technically, like if you would see that in Sanskrit, the letter A wouldn't be there. But because the way Devanagari is that this short A is implied in the consonant, unless otherwise stated. Right? So like, for example, the letter for example, this letter is ba, but it's like, you can't just say, you need to, in order to say ba, you need to have a right? So. Yeah, so if you would see it, it would end with a T.
That's
But
intelligent.
it's just implied that there's a otherwise you can't say it.
So which one did you say?
Huh?
So which one should you say?
Which?
Which one?
Mahabharata or Mahabharata?
Oh, either one is fine.
Okay. That's what I was thinking.
Basically, whatever people say is. Okay. Yes.
Their discourse, one of the greatest philosophical and religious dialogues known to man, took place just before the onset of war. A great fratricidal conflict between the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, and on the opposing side their cousins, the Pandavas, or the sons of Pandu.
Dhritarashtra and Pandu were brothers born in the Kuru dynasty, descending from King Bharat, a former ruler of the earth from whom the name Mahabharata derives. Because Dhritarashtra, the elder brother, was born blind, the throne that otherwise would have been his was passed down to the younger brother Pandu.
When Pandu died at an early age, his 5 children, Yudhisthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva, came under the care of Dhritarashtra, who in effect became, for the time being, the king. Thus the sons of Dhritarashtra and those of Pandu grew up in the same royal household. Both were trained in the military arts by the expert Drona and counseled by the revered grandfather of the clan, Bhishma.
Yet the sons of Dhritarashtra, especially the eldest Duryodhana, hated and envied the Pandavas. And the blind and weak-minded Dhritarashtra wanted his own sons, not those of Pandu, to inherit the kingdom.
Thus Duryodhana, with Dhritarashtra's consent, plotted to kill the young sons of Pandu. It was only by the careful protection of their uncle Vidura and their cousin Lord Krishna that the Pandavas escaped many attempts against their lives.
Now, Lord Krishna was not an ordinary man, but the supreme Godhead himself, who had descended to earth and was playing the role of the prince of a contemporary dynasty. In this role, he was also the nephew of Pandu's wife Kunti, or Pritha, the mother of the Pandavas. So both as a relative and as the eternal upholder of religion, Krishna favored the righteous sons of Pandu and protected them.
Ultimately, however, the clever Duryodhana challenged the Pandavas to a gambling match. In the course of that fateful tournament, Duryodhana and his brothers took possession of Draupadi, the chaste and devoted wife of the Pandavas, and insultingly tried to strip her naked before the entire assembly of princes and kings. Krishna's divine intervention saved her, but the gambling, which was rigged, cheated the Pandavas of their kingdom and forced them into 13 years of exile.
Upon returning from exile, the Pandavas rightfully requested the kingdom from Duryodhana, who bluntly refused to yield it. Duty-bound as princes to serve in public administration, the 5 Pandavas reduced their request to a mere 5 villages. But Duryodhana arrogantly replied that he wouldn't spare them enough land into which to drive a pin.
Throughout all this, the Pandavas had been consistently tolerant and forbearing. But now war seemed inevitable.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't want to just say
So short.
Nonetheless, as the princes of the world divided, some siding with the sons of Dhritarashtra, others with the Pandavas, Krishna himself took the role of messenger for the sons of Pandu and went to the court of Dhritarashtra to plead for peace. When his pleas were refused, war was now certain.
The Pandavas, men of the highest moral stature, recognized Krishna to be the supreme personality of Godhead, whereas the impious sons of Dhritarashtra did not. Yet Krishna offered to enter the war according to the desire of the antagonists. As God, he would not personally fight, but whoever so desired might avail himself of Krishna's army, and the other side could have Krishna himself as an advisor and helper. Duryodhana, the political genius, snatched at Krishna's armed forces, while the Pandavas were equally eager to have Krishna himself.
In this way, Krishna became the charioteer of Arjuna, taking it upon himself to drive the fabled Bona's chariots. This brings us to the point at which the Bhagavad Gita begins, with the 2 armies arrayed, ready for combat, and Dhritarashtra anxiously inquiring of his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do?
The scene is set, with only the need for a brief note regarding its translation and commentary. The general pattern translators have followed in rendering Bhagavad Gita into English has been to brush aside the Persian Krishna to make room for their own concepts and philosophies. The history of the Mahabharata is taken as quaint mythology, and Krishna becomes a poetic device for presenting the ideas of some anonymous genius, or at best he becomes a minor historical personage.
But the person Krishna is both the goal and the substance of Bhagavad Gita, so far as the Gita speaks of itself. This translation, then, and the commentary that accompanies it, propose to direct the reader to Krishna rather than away from him. Bhagavad Gita thus becomes wholly consistent and comprehensible. Since Krishna is the speaker of the Gita, and its ultimate goal as well, Bhagavad Gita as it is presents this great scripture in its true terms. The publishers.
So does everybody pretty much understand the scenario there, what's happening, how it all needs to be? Okay. So then that takes us to the preface. So this is the first, from here on out, everything else is written by Srila Prabhupada. And this preface by Prabhupada is very nice because he's explaining, why he wrote the Bhagavad Gita, and it's very personal. And like Shruti was talking this morning about how Srila Prabhupada is important to know Prabhupada, to understand Prabhupada's mood and his mission in starting this movement, spreading Krishna consciousness, and printing, so many books. So in this preface, we get a sense, there's a few, Prabhupada reveals several different aspects of his own mood and his mission. So we can try to keep an eye out for those. Okay, do you have a question? Where are we then? Ram, go for it.
Preface. Originally, I wrote Bhagavad Gita as it is in the form in which it is presented now. When this book was first published, the original manuscript was, unfortunately, cut short to less than 400 pages, without illustrations and without explanations for most of the original verses of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In all of my other books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Shapanishad, etc., the system is that I give the original verse, its English translation, word for word Sanskrit English equivalents, translations, and purports. This makes the book very authentic and scholarly and makes the meaning self-evident. I was not very happy, therefore, when I had to minimize my original transcript. But later on, when the demand for Bhagavad Gita as it is considerably increased, I was requested by many scholars and devotees to present the book in its original form. Thus, the present attempt is to offer the original manuscript of this great book of knowledge with full parampara explanation in order to establish the Krishna consciousness movement more soundly and progressively.
So here we can already see Prabhupada's revealing his mission. That he wants to establish the Krishna consciousness movement soundly and progressively, with books as the basis, and he wants them to be scholarly and authoritative, with the Sanskrit there, the word-for-word meaning, so people can see that what he's giving is the real deal.
Our Krishna consciousness movement is genuine, historically authorized, natural, and transcendental due to its being based on Bhagavad Gita as it is. It is gradually becoming the most popular movement in the entire world, especially amongst the younger generation. It is becoming more and more interesting to the older generation also. Older gentlemen are becoming interested, so much so that the fathers and grandfathers of my disciples are encouraging us by becoming life members of our great society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. In Los Angeles, many fathers and mothers used to come to see me to express their feelings of gratitude for my leading the Krishna consciousness movement throughout the entire world. Some of them said that it is greatly fortunate of the Americans that I have started the Krishna consciousness movement in America. But actually, the original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself. Since it was started a very long time ago, but is coming down to human society by disciplic succession. If I have any credit in this connection, it does not belong to me personally, but it is due to my eternal spiritual master. His divine grace, Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajakaracharya. 108 Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada.
Prabhupada really wanted to so here we can see Prabhupada's mood. What mood do you see here?
Humility.
Humility, how?
Saying I shouldn't get any credit for this.
Yeah.
Just because my group.
The parents and people are trying to express their gratitude to Prabhupada for starting the movement, and he's saying, well, it's nothing to do with me, the original father of this movement is who?
Krishna.
Krishna. Yeah. And if I've done anything, it's just by the mercy of my spiritual master. So Prabhupada's not taking any credit for himself. Okay.
If personally I have any credit in this matter, it is only that I have tried to present Bhagavad Gita as it is, without any adulteration. Before my presentation of Bhagavad Gita as it is, almost all the English editions of Bhagavad Gita We're introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition, but our attempt in presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is to present the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Our business is to present the will of Krishna, not that any mundane speculator, like the politician, the philosopher, or scientist, for they have very little knowledge of Krishna, despite all their other knowledge. When Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto padyajimam namaskuru, we, unlike the so-called scholars, do not say that Krishna and his inner spirit are different. Krishna is absolute. There is no difference between Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, etc. This absolute position of Krishna is difficult to understand for any person who is not a devotee of Krishna in the system of parampara. Generally, the so-called scholars, politicians, philosophers, swamis, without perfect knowledge of Krishna, try to banish or kill Krishna when writing commentary on Bhagavad Gita. Such unauthorized commentary upon Bhagavad Gita is known as Mayavad Bhasya, and Lord Chaitanya has warned us about these unauthorized men. Lord Chaitanya clearly says that anyone who tries to understand Bhagavad Gita from the Mayavadi point of view will commit a great blunder. The result of such a blunder will be that the misguided student of Bhagavad Gita will certainly be bewildered on the path of spiritual guidance and will not be able to go back home, back to Godhead.
So here in this paragraph we see a mood and a mission. What's the mood?
Krishna's God.
No, that's not a mood.
Present Krishna consciousness as he received.
Yeah, don't change anything. Right? And because he said that the reason that people change things is because they have personal ambition. So Prabhupada didn't have any personal ambition. He wasn't like, this is my page on the Bhagavad Gita. I'm so awesome that I understood it better than anybody else. I understood it even better than Krishna. No, it's like others. So it's like, no person, I'm just passing on it the way as it is. That's why he calls it Bhagavad Gita as it is. The way Krishna spoke it, that's what I'm delivering. And then what's the mission?
To destroy the misinterpretations.
Yeah, to point out the faults of these people who try to banish or kill Krishna when writing their commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Saying that, actually Krishna wasn't a real person, he's just an unmanifested, unborn energy within all of us. And nobody really spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it was kind of like manifested. Yeah. So bogus and impersonal. So Prabhupada was just like, no, because the result of that philosophy is not public anymore. It's just totally wrong.
Could it also be argued that he's trying to protect people from becoming bewildered and failing on their spiritual journey?
Yeah, that's why he's taking the trouble to defeat these people, is so people don't become misled. He wants people to make spiritual advancement, and the only way they're going to make spiritual advancement is to take it as it is, get medicine as it is. Okay. Steven.
Our only purpose is to present this Bhagavad Gita as it is in order to guide the conditioned student to the same purpose for which Krishna descends to this planet once in a day of the month, or every 8,600,000,000 years. This purpose is stated in Bhagavad Gita, and we have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, there is no point in trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita and its speaker, Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna first spoke Bhagavad Gita to the sun god some hundreds of millions of years ago. We have to accept this fact and thus understand the historical significance of Bhagavad Gita without misinterpretation on the authority of Krishna. To interpret Bhagavad Gita without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense. In order to save oneself from this offense, one has to understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he was directly understood by Arjuna, Lord Krishna's first disciple. Such understanding of Bhagavad Gita is really profitable and authorized for the welfare of human society and fulfilling the mission of life.
So here he says that his mission, my purpose is to presenting this Bhagavad Gita is to guide the conditioned student to the same purpose for which Krishna comes to this planet. And why does Krishna come to the planet?
To annihilate the miscreants and reestablish religious principles.
Yeah. To reclaim the conditioned souls, right? To deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, demoniac people, and to reestablish the principles of religion. So he's presenting this Bhagavad Gita to reestablish the real message of Krishna for the sake of delivering the devotees, like anybody who's pious enough to read it, and to counteract the demoniac interpretations. Hey.
The Krishna consciousness movement is essential in human society, where it offers the highest perfection of life. How this is so is explained fully in the Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, mundane wranglers have taken advantage of Bhagavad Gita to push forward their demonic propensities and mislead people regarding right understanding of the simple principles of life. Everyone should know how God or Krishna is great, and everyone should know the factual position of the living entities. Everyone should know that a living entity is eternally a servant, and that unless one serves Krishna, one has to serve illusion in different varieties of the three modes of material nature, and thus wander perpetually within the cycle of birth and death. Even the so-called liberated Mayavadi speculator has to undergo this process. This knowledge constitutes a great science, and each and every living being has to hear it for his own interest.
I'll use some strong word here. Mundane wranglers. Wranglers are like these, like pirate cowboys that would like steal people's cattle and stuff in the night. So it's like, he's saying that. So what happened is like these commentators, they wrangled the Bhagavad Gita, and they take the Bhagavad Gita and they just like try to hijack it and use it for their own purposes, right? Like whatever, the terrorist attack, they hijack the plane and then they use it to kill people and cause destruction. So that's basically what Prabhupada sees these Mayavadi and personal commentators as doing.
I never actually understood what that meant. Mundane.
And mundane because they're not understanding the transcendental message of Bhagavad Gita. So they're just putting a mundane twist on it and depriving people of getting the real benefit of Bhagavad Gita. That's why I'm saying that it's actually a great science and everybody will hear it, but if they hear it properly, it enables them to it offers the highest perfection of life. So and he emphasizes the point of serving Krishna. Because the whole Mayavadi thing is that we're all God. And we're all gonna merge into each other and we're all gonna just be God together sort of thing. So and when you're just merging with the light or merging into whatever weird conception of God they might have, impersonal conception of God, then there's no scope for service. There's no relationship, there's no love, because service requires, the servant, the served, and the service. Three things have to be there. But if there's no people, then there's no servant and there's no person to serve, so there can be no service. But that's our nature, is to serve Krishna. So then it's denying us, it's depriving us of the opportunity to fulfill perfect our true nature as living entities. So it's really pretty nasty. Okay, let's go on.
People in general, especially in this age of Kali, are enamored by the external energy of Krishna, and they wrongly think that by advancement of material comforts, every man will be happy. They have no knowledge that the material or external nature is very strong, for everyone is strongly bound by the stringent laws of material nature. The living entity is happily the part and parcel of the Lord, and thus his natural function is to render immediate service to the Lord. By the spell of illusion, one tries to be happy by serving his personal sense gratification in different forms, which will never make him happy. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and he demands it. One has to understand this central point of Bhagavad Gita. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the whole world this central point, and because we are not polluting the theme of Bhagavad Gita as it is, anyone seriously interested in deriving benefit by studying the Bhagavad Gita must take help from the Krishna consciousness movement for practical understanding of Bhagavad Gita under the direct guidance of the Lord. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success.
Again, Prabhupada's humility coming up. So this is also a nice point here. He's saying that, well, he says the Lord wants this and he demands it. Why, I mean, is Krishna really demanding? Why does he demand it? Exactly, it's for our own good. Because he really wants us to be happy. It's just like parents demand their children, eat this, eat your vegetables, go to school, do your homework, go to bed on time, because it's for their own good. So Krishna, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, he's giving instructions that we follow them and we can be happy. Any questions or comments on the preface?
What satisfies the senses of the Lord?
What satisfies the senses of the Lord?
Hare Krishna.
In Kali Yuga, it's chanting the holy names.
Very well.
And hearing and studying. Actually, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because here we are, we're going to read the Bhagavad Gita, study the Bhagavad Gita. So, although like in the Bhagavad Gita it tells us how to practice spiritual life, but just reading the Bhagavad Gita is actually a spiritual practice in itself. Krishna says towards the end that one who studies, in one of the very last verses of the 18th chapter, he says, one who studies the Bhagavad Gita worships me with his intelligence. So when we read the Bhagavad Gita, we're actually worshiping Krishna with our intelligence. And that's very important because I was just, I'm studying the 7th canto now in my class, and Prahlad Maharaj is teaching to Prahlad Maharaj, and he's saying that the whole reason that we're here in the material world and we're stuck here is because of polluted intelligence. So when we worship Krishna with our intelligence comes in touch with Krishna, who is completely pure, and not only is he completely pure, but he's purifying. So anything that touches him gets purified. So when we apply our intelligence to Krishna, to understanding his words and the conversation he has with Arjuna here, then it purifies our intelligence, and it basically transforms our whole life, our outlook. And it stops the cycle of repeated birth and death, because the reason we're here is polluted intelligence. As soon as our intelligence is not polluted, because what makes it material is the pollution. As soon as that, the material coverings are gone, then it's inherently spiritual. So we have spiritual. So by doing devotional practices like chanting, like reading the Bhagavad Gita, what we're doing is actually dissolving our material subtle bodies. There's a whole subtle process going on. I'm not just reading a book here. It's like while we're reading it, there's these amazing, like inconceivable and inconceivably beneficial subtle processes that are going on that are bringing us out of material illusion and misery and closer and closer to Krishna, bliss of real Krishna consciousness. So yeah, and we're also fortifying, like because we're all here, it means that we have a little spiritual intelligence already, right? So reading the Bhagavad Gita, it fortifies whatever, it cleans, it clears off the material coverings which are polluting our intelligence, and it fortifies our spiritual intelligence. And when our intelligence is strong, then we can use it to control the mind, control the senses, and live a peaceful, regulated life in the mode of goodness. When the intelligence is weak, then the mind just takes over, and then the mind and senses take charge, and then we struggle a lot. So it's really important to strengthen our intelligence by studying the scriptures, especially Krishna's direct words in the Bhagavad Gita. This is the only book that we have that's like, just full of Krishna's own personal words, and he's speaking to his dear devotee, who's not just a devotee, but it's a personal friend. So he's really delivering, it's just so laden with love and compassion and desire for Arjuna's benefit and for all of our benefit. Because the whole reason that Arjuna got bewildered in the first place was just so that we could hear the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna is already a pure devotee. But Krishna created this scenario just to speak it for our benefit. So we have to really like, cherish this opportunity to study Bhagavad Gita, especially together in the association of devotees. It's very potent. Increases the potency. We can help each other to understand. So, shall we jump into the introduction? We've already done. Maybe we can read the English translations from Mangalacharna, and then we'll go from there. Where do we leave off? Ananga. You can read maybe the first 3 translations.
I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Sri Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Sri Rupa Goswami along with his elder brother Sanatana Goswami, as well as Raghunath Dasi and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta and Sri Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda along with Advaitacharya, Gadadhar, Srivasa and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka.
Trish, you can read the rest of the translations.
Oh, my dear Krishna, ocean of mercy, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the cowherd men and the lover of the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily perfection is like the molten gold, who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. I offer my obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Sri Vasudeva, and all others in the line of
So, Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. It is the essence of Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads in Vedic literature. Of course, there are many commentaries in English on the Bhagavad Gita, and one may question the necessity for another one. The present edition can be explained in the following way. Recently, an American lady asked me to recommend an English translation of Bhagavad Gita. Of course, in America there are so many editions of Bhagavad Gita available in English, but as far as I have seen, not only in America but also in India, none of them can be strictly said to be authoritative, because in almost every one of them the commentator has expressed his own opinions without touching the spirit of Bhagavad Gita as it is.
The spirit of Bhagavad Gita is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita itself. It is just like this. If we want to take a particular medicine, then we have to follow the directions written on the label. We cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of a friend. It must be taken according to the directions on the label or the directions given by a physician. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita should be taken or accepted as it is directed by the speaker himself. The speaker of Bhagavad Gita is Lord Sri Krishna. He is mentioned on every page of Bhagavad Gita as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or any powerful demigod, and certainly here Bhagavan designates Lord Sri Krishna as a great personality. But at the same time, we should know that Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is confirmed by all great acharyas, spiritual masters like Shankaracharya, Mahaprabhu, I skipped something, Ramanujacharya, Madhavacharya, Nimbarka Swami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and many other authorities of Vedic knowledge in India. The Lord himself also establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita, and he is accepted as such in the Brahma Samhita and all the Puranas, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Bhagavata Purana. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Therefore, We should take Bhagavad Gita as it is directed by the personality of Godhead himself. In the 4th chapter of the Gita, 4.13, the Lord says, say it together,
Imam Vishvate Yogam Bhaktavedanta Abhyam Yasavam Yogipaha Manurishakame Pravi Imam Padam Padam Imam Rajasya Vidu Saragaya Yavadatarum Yoganasya Paranta Sayamamayate Dya Yoga Paratana Agosi Sakachati Agasvita Ludamam.
Here the Lord informs Arjuna that this system of yoga, the Bhagavad Gita, was first spoken to the sun god, and the sun god explained it to Manu, and Manu explained it to Krishna. And in that way, by cyclic succession, one speaker after another, this yoga system has been coming down. But in the course of time, it has become lost. Consequently, the Lord has to speak it again, this time to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
He tells Arjuna that he is relating the supreme secret to him because Arjuna is his devotee and his friend. The purport of this is that Bhagavad Gita is a treatise which is especially meant for the devotee of the Lord. There are 3 classes of transcendentalists, namely the Jnana, Yogi, and the Bhakta, or the impersonalist, the meditator, and the devotee. Here the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that he is making him the first receiver of a new parampara, the succession, because the old succession was broken. It was the Lord's wish, therefore, to establish another parampara in the same line of thought that was coming down from the sun god to others, and it was his wish that his teaching be distributed anew by Arjuna. He wanted Arjuna to become the authority in understanding Bhagavad Gita. So we see that Bhagavad Gita is instructed to Arjuna, especially because Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord, a direct student of Krishna, and his intimate friend. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita is best understood by a person who has qualities similar to Arjuna's. That is to say, he must be a devotee in a direct relationship with the Lord. As soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, he also has a direct relationship with the Lord. That is a very elaborate subject matter. But briefly, it can be stated that a devotee is in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 different ways. One may be a devotee in a passive state, one may be a devotee in an active state, one may be a devotee as a friend, one may be a devotee as a parent, one may be a devotee as a conjugal lover. Arjuna was in a relationship with the Lord as friend. Of course, there is a gulf of difference between the friendship and the friendship found in the material world. This is transcendental friendship, which cannot be had by everyone. Of course, everyone has a particular relationship with the Lord, and that relationship is evoked by the perfection of devotional service. But in the present status of our life, not only have we forgotten the Supreme Lord, but we have forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord. Every living being, out of the many, many billions and trillions of living beings, has a particular relationship with the Lord eternally. That is called Swarupa. By the process of devotional service, one can revive that Swarupa, and that stage is called Swarupa Siddhi, perfection of one's constitutional position. So Arjuna was a devotee, and he was in touch with the Supreme Lord in friendship.
We better stop. 7 o'clock. Parker wants to say something.
Yeah, I just really love how Prabhupada balances his statements. Like he said earlier, Sri Krishna is mentioned on every page of Bhagavad Gita as the Supreme Personality of God, Bhagavan. And then he says, of course, Bhagavan can sometimes refer to any powerful person or powerful demigod. So he presents the arguments that other people would say against his work in his work.
Yeah,
It
anticipates.
builds a lot of faith.
Yeah, probably really good at persuasion. Persuasive argumentation. So this ends with a very nice place to end because it's a very sweet point. That we all have a eternal loving relationship with Krishna, and that can be revived by devotional service. And that's studying Bhagavad Gita is devotional service, getting to know Krishna through his words. Because there's different ways you can know people. You can know them by hearing about them. You can know them by talking to them, hearing what they say. And you can know them by seeing what they do, their activities. So we have all these 3 ways of accessing knowledge of Krishna. And here we have what Krishna says, and also to some extent extent what he does. Bhagavatam gives much more about what he does. And then Bhagavatam also gives a lot of, like, people say things about him. So then you really get to know Krishna. Nice enough studying the scriptures. They go, coming. Please keep coming. And come on time, because we're going to start at 6 o'clock on the dot. We'll start with Mangal Charna, which is going to take like 2 minutes, and we'll go straight into reading. And if you come late, it kind of like makes a little bit of a disturbance. So if everyone can be here even like a couple of minutes before to get settled, that would be really helpful. We want to get through the whole Bhagavad Gita.
Don't get to chant Hare Krishna before.
We're going to go chant now.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhupada Priya.
Jai.
Vivo.
Bhagavad Gita ki.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Vivo. Srila Prabhupada Priya ki.
Jai.
No idea what
Gorilla status.
Prabhupada